Cool. I think we're live.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to season 2 of The Orbit. And I want to introduce Amira, who I've interviewed. How many times have I interviewed you and it never made it to air?
Don't jinx us. Jeez.
Why don't you?
I'm a warm-up act.
Okay, what?
A warm-up act.
Main event. So, Amira, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Yeah, cool. I do tech stuff by day and I do hand stuff with my hands at night. So like any crafty thing, any real world thing I can possibly get my hands onto. But I friggin' love the internet. I'm not one of those people who's just like, social media is destroying our like attention span. No, the internet is the future. We just need to harness it.
Where'd you grow up?
Southern California, podunk suburban town that used to be Cowtown and is no longer, just still smells like it. But yeah, nothing cool. Definitely moved out to the big city.
Yeah. And now you're living in Seattle.
Yeah, like coming on 5 years now. Definitely feels like home.
Very good.
Yeah.
Nice. And how did you get into the tech world?
So yeah, tech world. I left college wanting to be like an artist, but I figured like the way to make money was to be a graphic designer to do it. And, that led me to a lot of nowhere because I was not good at it. But I ended up at a job where I could do a little bit of graphic design, but it didn't take up my whole time. So then I would, just stick around trying to like build web pages and that kind of thing. And that just, leans me real hard into tech, found a boot camp, moved out here, did the whole shebang.
Oh, yeah. And for our audio listeners, is that your cat in the background?
It's definitely my cat. I wonder if that's gonna pick up. And she's a real thorough cleaner.
Nice.
So might be another minute or two.
Yeah, no worries. As long as people are like, oh, I know what that is now.
Yeah. Can place it. Yeah.
So what we're shooting to do with these, with season 2 of The Orbit is talk about curation. There is so much stuff out there online, the internet, tools available. Mm-hmm. And for me, like in reading and consuming media and also just going on the internet, I think there's so much out there that the new curation is art. Yeah. The ability to grab as many different things and then pick the best things to share is like something I think I like seeing other people do. And I think Amira and I can attempt to do it the best we can.
Yeah, for sure.
So this week we looked into no-code platforms.
Yeah.
And so do you want, have you ever used no-code tools before?
I feel like I skipped right over the no-code stuff. I feel like a lot of people or a lot of like school environments will like use it as a way where it's like code isn't scary. Like, look, it's just blocks and stuff. But I like got into code like via MySpace and like Neopets, So it was like still very approachable and still very like funsy. But yeah, no, definitely, like, as far as, like, for my own personal use, skipped right over them completely. But they're so cool.
Like, with MySpace, though, some of that was just straight up code.
It was basically HTML and CSS. And, I don't know, like, Neopets even had published a guide, which was really wild to me because you could, like, customize your shop. And so I learned how to, like, use tables and things like, and, like, background color and stuff from that little Neopets guide.
That's really cool.
I know what they did there. Like, yeah, exactly.
Did you ever use Logo? Do you remember this?
Logo? No.
Logo. This is how I got introduced to computer programming in like elementary school. In the computer class, they had this thing called Logo, and basically it was a tiny turtle in the middle of your screen, and you would have to type commands to like make the turtle paint things. Yeah.
Oh, that's cute. And it's fun because like that is a concept like used today. So like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Flexbox is like it's like a CSS thing. I don't even know what you would call it, but like, it's basically a way to like display layout in CSS. And it was a very like mind bendy when it first came out. And there was this thing called Flexbox Froggy where you would have like these little, what are they called? Like lily pads that like and then you would have some frogs, and it's like, can you get all the frogs onto the lily pad? And so you're like using the Flexbox like code to like get the frogs there. And I still reference that sometimes.
Yeah, that sounds like something I need badly.
Yeah. There's tons of great little like artsy, I don't know, like visual learning, right? Like CSS is visual, so it makes sense that there would be a lot of visual games to like teach stuff.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As far as my background, I do not professionally do computer things. But I am trying to teach myself, which is why I was interested in no code tools. And I came across just a good list of no code platforms from Ryan Hoover, who is the founder of Product Hunt. He wrote a Medium article just talking about no code tools, which allow people to make websites, apps, logos, etc. With visual components, not having to type any programming languages. So what was the first one that you tried of the ones that on that list that I shared with you?
Oh, it was definitely, well, Scratch, because I feel like Scratch is the one that like I've heard of. I like visited at least once before, and I was like, okay, I kind of know this, and then I realized that I didn't actually know it at all. But it was really cool. So yeah, it was definitely Scratch was the top. And honestly, it ended up being my favorite. I don't know if I'm giving like a spoiler, but definitely it was my favorite.
Yeah. Scratch, developed by MIT, and basically it's geared towards teaching kids programming.
Yeah.
And I've heard of people like making their minimum viable product on Scratch to pitch.
Yeah, that is wild. But I don't doubt that that's some like Silicon Valley shit happening all the time.
Truth. So why did you like Scratch?
Okay, so Scratch, okay, I did appreciate what Scratch is doing because I feel like it was still very much code. Like it wasn't like they were trying to be like, oh, here's a block and like it just does magical things. Like as someone who knows how to write code, like for example, the way that they formatted their while loop, which I'm sure is something that other companies have adopted too, but it was like, like a container that you can like put something within, and it had a little arrow showing you like this thing loops over itself. And I'm like, if you just like, squinted, you could see the shape of the blocks, and like that's what the shape of your code would look like if you wrote it out. So I really appreciate that they like they're all about like, or they seem to be about bridging that gap. It's not so much of like we're gonna like show you baby tools and keep you in the baby tools. It's like you could progress if you want, but like this also can get the job done.
Right. It doesn't take out, it teaches you programming.
Yeah.
Instead of like eliminating the complexity of programming.
Right. And it's something that like you can always be like, oh yeah, because in Scratch it's like this, rather than being like, wait, Scratch doesn't even do it like that, or like it doesn't look like it. Like, it gives you a point of reference.
You linked a couple of these projects.
I did.
Do you want to show me these?
Yeah, well, like before we dive into that, I think this is what made Scratch my favorite, because I totally viewed Scratch as like, oh yeah, it's just like a learning tool. It's meant for children, right? And then you go to like the community tab, and I like couldn't believe that people made these things in Scratch. I was just like, what are you doing? And then also just like, it wasn't just like, oh, here's my tiny little project that's like a little coding thing. It was like, no, I made an entire animation and synced it up to audio that I also sang. Like, yeah, exactly. I'm like, wait, what? Like, so people are like, yeah, you're using the platform, but they're also hacking the platform to be like, I don't have the fancy like Final Cut Pro or whatever, but I know that like Scratch can sync up audio with animation, and so as an animator, I'm gonna leverage this tool. And so it was just mind-blowing to me.
I love that. There's like a concept that you're probably familiar with of low barriers and high ceilings.
Oh, yeah.
Which is exactly what's happening. It's like, hey, here are some tools that you can do a lot with.
Right. And I feel like it's so Tumblr, right? Because I feel like I don't know, there was like these articles coming out a bit ago where it's like, oh, people don't want to give like teenage girls the credit that they're due, but honestly, they're like media producers. Like if you look at these Tumblrs and like the different like things that they have going on, and like the GIFs and memes and things that they've created, it's like you're a full-blown content creator, and just because it's hosted on Tumblr shouldn't like credit it any less. And so I feel the same with like these kinds of like makers out there where it's like you're using code to make something that was not originally intended. Like that is amazing.
Yeah, that's creativity. That's what I'm here for.
Right, yeah.
Cool. Please show me.
Okay, cool. I'm going to attempt to share my screen.
Great.
And
You don't have any sensitive information, do you? Like, okay,
nope,
nice.
Just posting it, looking at our own stuff.
Great.
Okay, so I'm just gonna like open these all up and hopefully they don't like autoplay or something. So I think this first one is the animation I was talking about. Yes. Okay.
Okay. All right. So I don't know if the viewers can hear this, but there is audio. There's a song here.
Yeah, that was like a full animation clip.
Yeah,
and like
it may have been playing on your computer, so we may be able to hear it there.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
If not, I'm sure we can like link it somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway.
But yeah, and so you can do the like see inside. And it took me, I'm not super familiar with Scratch, so it took me a little bit to be like, what is going on? But this is the code, really, right? Those are like the blocks.
Uh-huh.
But really where all the work is happening is that they have like this custom thing over here with like their little characters. And then if you go, oh goodness, if you go to like the script, you can see like they have each of the frames like drawn out.
That's incredible.
Right? And like there's sounds. I don't know what's
Okay,
going on.
so what is going on there?
Yeah, and so now this is
so this is the code that's happening on these sprites.
Right. And so it's like basically saying like, hey, we're gonna play this like audio stuff. And like when a certain number, like I think that corresponds with the frame comes up, like play the next clip or whatever. But it was just wild to me because I'm just like, what the heck? Like this is not probably what the creators of like, MIT wasn't out here being like, oh yeah, we'll make a low like weight animation tool.
Right. So to like I'm trying to describe this for audio. I don't know if it'll work, but what I'm looking at is, so the sprites are just items on your screen. They're like characters. And what this person has done is drawn a bunch of different frames for their sprite. And then their programming just identifies at what point in time they move to the next frame.
Yep. And that's insane to me.
That's wild.
Yeah. And this person talks about how like, oh yeah, I animated everything and like remixed it from some other friend. Oh yeah, so apparently like the animation was actually made by somebody else. And so I guess they just added like the audio bit on top. But yeah, like the concept of remixes, like, also from like Tumblr with like reblogs and things like that.
Yeah. That's so cool. What are the comments? I need to see a comment.
I think it's mostly just like, this is amazing.
Nice.
Oh yeah. And maybe this is from Legos too. I don't know. But people are into it.
Very cool. All right, let's look at another one.
Okay, let's see what else I saved on here. Okay, so this was like this is what I kind of expected of Scratch. Was like something very like simple, straightforward, just kind of like, oh, I made a thing work. And so this person has basically a page where they just have different quotes that are like hidden behind a button. And then when you click on the button, it shows you a funny quote. And apparently this is the second time they've done it, and it was by popular demand. So good on that.
Very good.
But yeah. And so one of the quotes, my bed is a magical place where I suddenly remember everything I forgot to do, has a back button. I feel like this is totally great UX.
Yeah. So there are like 6 tiles, and they each have numbered quotes on it. When you click the quote, it shows what's behind the card.
Yeah. And so this was where my expectations totally were.
Can I see one more quote? No, like number 3.
Number 3, yeah.
When life gives you lemons, you tell life to get a life because lemons are a terrible gift. All right, bud.
Oh man, yeah, definitely.
And let's look inside.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, I really enjoy this part as well because seeing the work that goes in, I'm always surprised.
Yeah. And I wonder, okay, this is pretty interesting too.
Got it. So we have blocks that when they click the particular quote box, it'll hide the previous screen and probably just load
Yeah.
the sprite.
Okay, so this also like kind of reminds me of like the one con I could think of with Scratch. Um, is that like as much as I enjoy the fact that it mirrors what code would actually look like in production, the one thing where it falls short is that, for example, like what you can see here is that they have separate configurations for each of the quotes. So there's 6 quotes that do all the same thing, right? So you click on the quote, it shows it, and then they have a back button to go back to the home page. And so they have that happening 6 different times depending on what, like one for each quote. And so that's not how you would actually write code, right?
Right. You would make it more like you wouldn't repeat yourself as much.
Yes, exactly. And maybe even like, you know, how would you organize this in a file structure and that kind of thing. And so I feel like this is Scratch's way of like, you know, intentionally or not, limiting you as far as like how complex your project can be.
Right. And at that point, if you're thinking about that, you should just jump into code.
Right, exactly. So yeah, so maybe it's like a good like nudge into graduation. Maybe it's a nice way to keep things simple. But yeah, you definitely have to be like a self-motivation thing to know that though, because I feel like you could easily, you know, spiral out of control if like no one told you that there's a better way to do this.
Yeah. Shall we look at one more?
Yes, one more, my absolute favorite, which I kind of think I understand. So
I want to start by saying, welcome to Avocado Island.
Avocado Island.
So it says Avocado Island. We haven't clicked play yet, but there's just like a cute little avocado graphic, and I'm intrigued.
And only good guys are allowed explicitly. So I'll press play and I'll try and like push buttons around. I totally didn't get it to work last time, but we'll see. Okay. So it's cute little whistly, very like Link kind of vibes. I don't know. But yeah, it says Avocado Island. Tired of boring void? Then come on down to Avocado Island. Only good guys allowed.
Yeah, this music is ridiculous.
So you can like zoom in and zoom out. You can see the whole island, which by the way seems to be floating like on a turn. When you zoom in, you can see all of these people and they're like dancing and moving around these little stores and shops. Oh my gosh, there's actual shops. I didn't know you can like buy things. This is like a full-on game. And apparently you can take a picture, but I don't know where it goes.
Huh. So it's almost like, if anything, it's an attempt at creating like SimCity or like,
yeah,
it's a tiny little town. All these little people are doing their own things and you can click on them. Yeah.
And so I wasn't the only one who's confused. There's a bunch of comments being like, I don't know what this is. I'm a bit confused. What I've gathered though, is that someone made Avocado Island. That was probably population 1. And then with every like remix, you're able to add yourself into Avocado Island.
Oh.
And that's how it becomes populated. There was like some hints about how, oh yeah, like see updates. Maybe it was private at some point because it says now you know who officially lives in the island, and it's got new buildings and you can personalize your character. There's like a new collection of like preset steps. So like, yeah, people were like creating their own Sim City and inviting their friends to join.
I love this.
Yeah, I think this is like the greatest thing I've ever seen.
And that's very like, so I'm thinking about like RuneScape.
Okay.
Right? Like it's just a virtual town that you can populate.
Yeah. And like the best part about it is like you don't have to upkeep anything. Like there's no keep animals alive or anything like that. It's just like add yourself. Now you're part of the fun.
Nice.
Oh, yeah. So wholesome.
It is.
It's so wholesome.
Well, if you want to exit out and get back to regular chat screen,
Yeah, let's do it.
uh, Scratch was your favorite, and
Yeah.
is it because it's because of the formatting of the code?
Yeah. I think it lends itself a lot to like it's doing a good job of being very welcoming and inclusive, right? So it's
Uh-huh.
like if you want to do small baby projects, you can. If you want to make a full-blown animation with audio, you can do that too. And I think that's really cool to like not limit people and to keep things really open. I'm sure that makes it so much harder for their developers, but bless them for what they do. Yeah. And it's like the community made it all the difference, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah.
It seems like a very fun community to be a part of. I'm very curious as far as the people who spend a lot of time on Scratch.
Yeah. I'd be so curious to know what like the demographic is, like age wise, like location, like who's
Right.
having fun with this thing. Yeah,
Very cool.
for sure.
Let's move to the next one. Is that Gina?
It is Gina.
Hi, Gina. Gina, what is she looking at?
I have no idea. There's nothing over there.
It's a ghost.
And so intently. Maybe she's
It's
looking.
unsettling.
She sees you through the camera, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah.
On a related note to Scratch, I really liked Thunkable.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah. Did you try this out?
So I mostly just like browsed around and like looked at them because like I'm gonna be honest with you, the minute I saw paywall, I was like, no, thank you.
So I specifically chose things that had a pretty broad free tier.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Like I think you can make a good amount of projects. Let me check here. So Thunkable, just to explain, is you can make mobile apps with no code, which is really cool. Looking at pricing, so free, the free tier, unlimited public projects,
Mm-hmm.
200 megabytes account storage, and they're branded.
Yeah.
But then if you like wanted to be professional with it, it's $17 a month.
Mm-hmm.
So did you mess with this one at all?
No, I think I like looked around with like Bubble more than anything. Out of the last two of them.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, it was interesting to me because like Thunkable and then yeah, I think it's called Bubble. The one that starts with a B.
Yeah.
But they definitely seem to be like professional, you know?
Right. And
Right.
so it makes me think about how like technically Squarespace is a no-code platform.
Yeah. But they definitely market themselves to like small businesses and like
Right. And so they're like, yeah, you can build a website without having to learn to code, and it's going to look really good if you use our platform. Like Thunkable and Bubble, which we'll touch on next, aren't as pretty to look at.
Yeah, they're not like so like I don't know.
Like their end product. So
yeah.
I'm gonna share my screen now.
Yeah, your turn.
And let me see. There it is. Great. So this is my Thunkable thing that I made. And if you look at their program design, so this is the front end where you can design the UI for your phone.
Yeah.
So I got a button here, I got text outputs, and you can enter them in. So this is almost like, I like to think when we're putting together like slideshow presentations, this is what it feels like.
Yeah.
As far as drawing your text box. But then the blocks are straight up Scratch.
Right. Yeah.
So this is, they're drawing directly from that kind of visual language.
Yeah.
And what this does, I was very surprised at like the components that they have here. Like, for example, you can use on your phone like the accelerometer. They have image recognition.
Yeah.
And this is all like, this is, I get what you're saying when this is not like geared towards kids, because it's like blockchain wallets.
Yeah.
But what I made, and it works, I made this in maybe an hour, including tutorial time. But when I hit scan, it'll open up your phone's camera, and then it'll scan a book barcode and then show you what book it is.
Nice, yeah.
And what I think was important is that, yes, it's a no code platform, but like I needed to know how API requests worked
Oh,
in order to do
wow.
that. So like I entered in like the URL to to open library, and then passed in the variable in the URL to get those results.
You know, and it's so funny because like looking at those blocks, like I am overwhelmed. You know,
It's yeah,
like
it's a
there's
lot.
it's a lot going on, but yeah. I don't know, and it's so funny because like if you're on like on the design side, that UI reminds me so much of like Xcode, where it's like you have like a whole like bar on either side and it's got like so much stuff. You're like, oh goodness, I don't even know where to start.
Yeah, I've heard of Xcode. That is how you design iPhone apps, right?
Yeah, yeah, design and build iOS apps.
So would you say this does this simplify it at all?
I would say so because it's like I feel like you know when I'm assuming that when you like drag and drop stuff from that like UI section there, it's kind of like a fully formed component thing, and I
Mm-hmm.
don't. That's like I haven't done too much mobile development, but as I remember it, like nothing really comes out of the box like other than like Apple's like pre-made stuff, you know, like they have like a button and like a menu or something.
Right.
But yeah, having like a switch like that, date input like that, that's pretty nice.
I thought it was pretty cool. And I think the question that Lido, our friend Lido, asked me was that can you make custom components? Like for example, if the barcode scanned wrong, would you be able to error handle and that kind of thing?
Yeah.
And you could, but at that point you're just computer programming.
Right, right, exactly. And I'm so curious because I feel like both these other two, like Thunkable and Bubble, like they're definitely, you know, marketing towards like not enterprise, but like definitely businesses. And they
Mm-hmm.
have like their business tier. And I wonder how much of their like sales team's job is to be like, you can't possibly do this on your own. Like you need us. Like you've got like
Mm-hmm.
even though you've gotten to this high level, like let's keep you in. Um,
Right.
you know, whereas like you know an open source thing like Scratch is just not gonna doesn't have that motivation at all.
Right. I think what was helpful for me, like I've never made a mobile app and didn't know where to start, and it would probably be a learning curve, but
Mhm.
here I can make something that looks okay. And in this corner here, we have a publish to the App Store button and publish to Android. And you have to like fill out all the paperwork and it has to meet a lot of requirements, but you have that option to just push it to production if it works.
Ah, that is really neat. I wonder if Thunkable handles for, so I don't know if you know, but like to publish to the App Store, you have to be an Apple developer, and in order to be an Apple developer, you have to like pay $100 a month or something like that for membership.
Wow. I
Yeah,
didn't
and so
know
that's a
that.
huge barrier. And so I wonder if Thunkable like you know eats that cost so that you can like publish via them, then like that would be a big
I
plus.
don't, that's something to look into. I don't know.
Yeah, that's cool.
But that's Thunkable. I would say I enjoyed it because I like the idea of knowing I can make mobile apps.
Yeah, which are very tricky.
Yeah,
Sure, got a lot of overhead.
Bubble. How did we feel about Bubble?
More or less the same. I think that they also like leaned in Thunkable's kind of route where it's like they wanted to be approachable with the block coding, but in
Hmm.
order to do all of the things that they want to do, it does get a bit complex.
It's
Um,
super complex. They have a lot of tutorials, and I found that I couldn't just open up a window and start.
yeah, yeah, and they wanted, and I feel like I kept clicking on their community tab because it was like the first in their navigation links. So I feel like they were trying to really like sell that, like, oh, you're not alone. But then when I visited it, they were like, oh, we have like X amount of users and Y number of questions and this amount of docs. And I'm like, those metrics mean nothing to me because that could have just been like empty pages of stuff. Like when I think community, I'm thinking like what Scratch had, like of just like I expected to see galleries of like other people's work, things that I can be inspired by, be like, oh, I didn't know that was possible. But like a help page uh, didn't quite do it for me.
Right.
Um,
What I don't know what it is with mine, but it always came to a tutorial screen as almost my home when I log in. So it was like, here's some lessons that you have to do.
oh,
And just because I was like, there's no way I'm going to figure this out on my own. I just did the lessons. And once I did, I understood and made stuff. Did you make anything with it?
I don't think I made anything with it. No. Yeah, because I mean, they have a free tier, but they also have tons of paid tiers too, right?
They do.
They do
Yeah.
have.
I think what's important to me is that looked at a couple of these no code platforms. There are a couple directories like nocode.tech that will direct you to like places to make things.
Yeah.
And if you have a mandatory paywall, I'm not going to try your thing.
Yeah,
Because
definitely.
like prove to me that it works first and let me get attached, then charge me.
Yeah, and it's like not even like prove to me to that it works, but I feel like code is one of those things where like if someone was like, "Oh, you can totally like do this electrical like thing in your house," I'd be like, "No, I can't. That's electricity. I'm gonna die." You
Uh-huh.
know? So I think people have like the same idea with code where it's like, "Oh, I can't possibly do that. That's like internet magic." And so I feel like half of the like the pull onto your platform should be like code is approachable. Anyone can do it, just give me like an hour of your time and like you'll know so much more than you did before. And so to put up like a financial barrier on top of this like stigma, I don't know if like you would call it a stigma, but like
Yeah,
definitely it's like
it's another reason not to do it.
yeah, exactly. And so like I don't know, I'm like way turned off on that because like if anything, I've just like heard so many people be like, "Oh my gosh, like you do that for a living, that's so cool." And I'm like, "You could too. It's literally just like you're just writing. You're really just writing."
This is true. And like my question to you, like for example, you've seen some of the code projects that I do.
Mhm.
And like what is the like for me who's in the middle of learning code, what is the next step to higher ability, would you say?
Oh, so I feel like the difference between doing your own project where it's just you working on it, you get to
Hmm.
do it at your own pace, is just the difference of like being it's what makes an amateur a professional, right? Like
Right.
I get paid because I am able to like work with other people and with a code base that has lived longer than me at some points, you know? And so it's really about like, can you write something that's maintainable? Which when you're doing like your own side projects, it's kind of like you did it, it's completed. It's very rarely that you actually go back to it and like build on top of it further. And I feel like those are the things that that's when you start to see your own pitfalls where you're like,
Mhm.
oh shoot, I wrote that in a way that makes it that I can't build anything on top of it unless I rewrite the whole thing,
I
right?
am experiencing that sometimes.
Ah, yeah, see, because like your projects are getting bigger and bigger, right?
Right.
Yeah, and then there's also the cases where like I feel like this is definitely more relevant if you're going more of a back end route where it's like if you just don't have enough data, you know, to like work with or like enough users to like do that. Like if you wanted to build like a Facebook, right? It's not actually going to make a bunch of sense if you have like yourself as a
Hmm.
user, right? Um, so yeah, I think when it comes to like getting into that professional realm, it's starting to look more like how do you work with something that is existing and like collaborative, right? And so I feel like the jump from doing personal projects that are on your own time is maybe to doing open source projects that are also on your own time. But then now you're like working with like hundreds of other people. This code base could be a legacy thing lasting years. And like there's like a set expectation of like how things work, right? I feel like my personal struggle as a recovering perfectionist is like going to work and being like, we use commas here. And I mean, not commas, but like semicolons. Like we use semicolons in our JavaScript. I personally don't care for it. I think it looks cluttered, but that's like literally just a personal preference. And so I have to remember to do that at work, you know, and that kind of
A lot to think about.
thing.
Let's take a look at Bubble just so we can see what it looks like.
Yeah,
I'm
absolutely.
going to share my screen again. Um, what I liked about Bubble is that it's built like well. Like I think so. My project is here. I don't have any working projects,
Mhm.
but I can show you the lessons. Um, like for example, there was
Oh, I like that hard mode. That's pretty tight.
yeah. So the hard mode is when they don't have arrows pointing to where you need to do things.
Okay, so less guided.
Yeah. So this is how it looks. And then the tutorial, it will tell you what you're going to do. And usually it'll have an arrow. I think it has it on medium mode for me. So I'm drawing as if I were drawing a slideshow presentation.
Yeah.
I'm ignoring the instructions right now, which is probably confusing the program. But like type input here, and yeah, it'll just update the button. So you build similar to Thunkable, you build the front end, and then the code itself, if you go to workflow, you click events, and then you will add actions.
Okay, it's not blocks, but like a flow. Okay.
Yeah, it's not blocks, but I thought this was really well done because you can, for example, for me learning computer programming, I have to take like a 5-hour long course on how to do a login system.
Yeah.
And this, I can click 3 buttons and I have a login system.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is so helpful. And also like learning about databases is like a full month of education for me.
Yeah, definitely.
And here I can just click like create database and I can initialize it and connect users to it really well. So I really like that. I think this is a legit no code platform, and it also is grown up because it can process payment.
Mm-hmm.
You have a bunch of plugins where you can attach other services as well. It is made for enterprise.
Yeah, definitely. But it's kind of nice because, like, I don't know, I feel like if I were to go freelance, I feel like the most common like projects I would get is like, could you just build my like 1-page site or something, or like a quick like shop or whatever. And it's always difficult to say yes to those things because it's like, yeah, I can build it, but I'm not going to maintain that for you. And not that this would be an option for that scenario, but I mean, if someone wanted to skip the middleman and go straight to something that they could build and maintain themselves, this definitely seems like a better route than like WordPress, for example, which like does try to market itself as like, oh, we have a GUI and it's super approachable, but like they have like a ridiculous amount of plugins that like aren't always well kept, and like, you know, you actually do have to like dig into the code at some point if you want something a little bit custom or a little bit different.
So now what I'm thinking about is who would benefit the most from no code stuff? Like who is the best audience for this?
That totally depends on who you ask. Cause
Yeah.
like me as like someone who, you know, likes to make things just for like shits and giggles, I would definitely say like it's like no code should just be for like the layman, like anybody that's just interested in making something that's digital, right?
Right.
But
and when we say like making things, we're like dynamic applications, things
yeah,
that take input and produce an output.
right.
Because what you're saying is like, as a software engineer, you don't want to build a portfolio site for someone.
Right. Yeah. No. And that's like not what's going to be fun for me. Right. And so, but like, I mean, I don't know. I think there's like, I don't know. It's like two different things in that like, there's a camp of people who are like, okay, I need it. Like tech is like how you do the thing this day. Like, and I just need to learn how to do it. Right. And so I feel like Bubble and Thunkable are like more on that route where it's just like, this is a means to an end. Like, I'm not really worried about like what I'm creating. It's just, I need to make a product.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like things like Scratch are more like, let me open your eyes into what's possible if you learn this one skill, right? Yeah. And that's what I think is truly empowering and can change the way people approach tech. Because I mean, anytime I teach anyone how to like do something in code, like the first thing I say is like, oh yeah, you should think of a project of like, what's something you do in your daily life that's like really repetitive and you want to like automate it, or like what's like a cool little tool that you would like find to be really helpful in your day to day. And once they like figure out like what is possible, like it's nonstop, you know, it's just like, oh my God,
Yes.
There's so many ways I can improve my life.
This comes up often. And I think I mentioned this in my vlog, but the greatest question you can ask is like, what do I want to make? And it requires like to make things and to like develop like applications and use code, you have to imagine something.
Right, right.
Or else you're just going to be sitting at a screen and you'll be like, I don't even know what's possible. I remember I went to a I went to a Internet of Things meetup.
Nice.
And basically they had these little microcontrollers and Esprinos. Have you heard of these? They're kind of like Arduinos.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was just like Arduinos.
Right. But they're tiny little, they look like, computer parts. And the guy taught us all how to plug it into our computer and then connect it to the Wi-Fi and to run it.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it. And he said, okay, there you go. You can do anything. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, I see that this is happening, but I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Scratch is good, because it's showing so many examples of wildly different things that people have done.
Yeah. And it definitely comes at a trade-off, right? Because I feel like Thunkable and Bubble know who is going to make their business continue, right? Like, who's going to pay for this at the end of the day? And I feel like, for example, Bubble is able to provide with these very specific things of like, here, this is how you do like a payment thing, this is how you do a login thing, that is so helpful, because that's something that they know that their audience needs, and they're able to like focus in on that. But by doing that, they're excluding a lot of other people, which is fine, because then there's other things like Scratch, which are going to keep it super, super open, meaning that you're going to have to create anything that you want, custom in like the tiniest bit, but still keeps it just so open. So
when, like, I might know the answer to this, but what is like the sign that you should stop using no code and just move to code?
I would say like when it starts to feel like it's hindering you more than helping you. I feel like, the minute, like, at least like even in like my daily job, like I'm writing something out, blah, 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 I'm trying to figure out a solution. And, it's one of those things, it's the same thing as writing, right? Usually the first draft isn't the greatest. Usually you have to like think on it a couple of times. And so for me, actually it's like a term that they use in programming, like in the industry, is called like a code smell, which is really just like a gut check, right? When
a code smell? I like that.
Yeah, you've never heard that? Yeah, it's really good. So it's just like when you can't put your finger on what's wrong, but you're like, this feels icky, like the kind of feeling that you would get if you like open the door and you're like, oh, this is like the beginning to a horror movie, like something bad is about to happen.
Oh yeah.
Like, so you get that little gut feeling. And so it's, it usually comes around where like you're on the third iteration of something and you're like writing the 15th comment, and or like maybe you've just gone down to like the 50th line and you're like, this is like, I am doing it and I am overwhelmed. Yeah. So I can't even imagine what the next person who's going to be reading this, even if it's like future me, is going to be feeling. So I feel like once you start to like feel that tension of just like, I'm outgrowing this, I feel like it'll be pretty obvious when you want to do something that's outside of the ability. Yeah,
I'm definitely hitting that with Glitch.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like I use Glitch, which is just a straight up coding platform. It's very friendly, which is why I'm there. And there are certain things that I now need to do, like using Git, that I am now having to take off the training wheels in that regard.
Yeah, and so Git is version control. It's basically something that can keep a snapshot of your code at different points in time, which is very helpful for when you fuck things up and you go back or remember the really cool thing that you did that you can't remember how you pulled that off.
Glitch has a version of this. They call it Rewind, and you can just drag a timeline cursor to see where your project was at any given time. But like, if I'm going to work with others, I need to know the other stuff. Yeah. I want to conclude by showing you one more.
Okay.
Because I thought the user experience was very good. Voice flow.
Oh, I've never heard of this one.
So voice flow is for making voice apps for, like Google, for Google Assistant and Alexa. I'm going to say Alexa, and now my device is going to be listening to me. I know, poor device. I'm going to say device instead of Alexa in this moment. But let me log in real quick. Hopefully it's not going to show any credentials. Oh, bless you.
Nice.
So it's so pleasant to use because the coding sequence looks like this.
Oh, interesting.
So I have dabbled in like voice development a while ago. So the reason they have like the start, stop, and help is like these are mandatory commands that you have to have for your application.
Helpful.
And then you can just create these, similar to Bubble, these flows of logic for how it's going to operate.
Mm,
And it's very pleasant to use.
yeah.
And also you can kind of visualize, and it just gives you a big old canvas. And so this doesn't feel like Bubble or Thunkable or Scratch in the way
Right.
that it handles input.
Yeah. And this is so funny because like definitely when it comes to like architecture design is like basically in software like things can get at like very complex very quickly, right? And so you'll have okay, like there's this service that's like responsible for this and then it interacts with this other service and there's so often times when people just end up drawing a diagram to be like how do all of these things talk to each other? And I
Uh-huh.
feel like that's just doing it out of the gate and that's really I mean as a visual learner, I appreciate it. Definitely.
I'm a learn by doing kind of guy.
Nice.
So we tapped into a handful of no code projects, and I want to try to identify, did we figure out anything in curating these? Because I like knowing that the tools are available.
Yeah, definitely. I think we definitely pinpointed that like whoever the audience is matters a lot on like what they're going to get out of it and what they're looking for and what to accomplish. And if you're a learner, if you're like trying to learn how to program, you're not trying to get around programming. There's definitely different like tiers of platforms for like based on your level, right? So I
Right.
feel like Scratch would probably be a starting point, and then Glitch would be somewhere in the middle, and then the actual like Xcode editor that you like professionals build their iOS apps in would be like at at the top there. Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's still programming. Like when I'm doing this, I am thinking like having taken code tutorials has helped me make things in Thunkable and Bubble and
Mhm.
VoiceFlow. Like
Yeah.
it honestly probably made it easier because I understand why it's set up this way.
Right. And it's actually pretty fascinating because, like, so one thing that my teachers always taught me was like, okay, yeah, you're going to learn one programming language and it's going to be really, really hard because you've never learned that before. But then once you speak one language, it's really easy to jump to the next language and the next language and the next because there's a lot of transferable knowledge, right? And so I feel like the same thing with these platforms. Like we saw the similarities between them, the different blocks and like the flows that they use. And so it's like once you like ramp up on one, you will know the language in order to search up things for the next and like how to troubleshoot it and all that. So the first one might be hard, but keep going.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Well, I think that we got a good tasting and overview and a lot of info. I think we hit the 45-minute mark.
Oh, tight.
So thank you all for tuning in. And Amir and I are just going to try to collect things on the internet and share them with you, familiar, like kind of like this. So tune in next time. All right. Thanks again, Amir, for joining me. And we will see you all in episode 2.